So it's Veterans Day here, and it coincides with Kristallnacht, which is the anniversary of essentially the launch of the Holocaust against the Jews.
Very well. I was 14 years old.
Was the news of it broadcast?
Yeah. I lived in the Bronx. We didn't have television, but we had radio and we had newspapers, and in those days the newspapers printed the news.
Different from today?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
But
the New York Times is still the New York Times.
Did you have German and Austrian refugees already living in the Bronx?
Yeah, in fact, Henry Kissinger lived in Manhattan right across. I was on the Harlem River, so I was looking up at Manhattan out of my kitchen and bedroom window, and that's where Henry Kissinger went to George Washington High School in Washington Heights. Yeah, there was a lot of. And in fact, it was funny because the old-time Jews in New York resented the refugees because they were taking jobs, So same old thing is going on today,
What was the attitude about against the Nazi fascism? Was that a motivator for the American forces to defeat fascism?
We knew Hitler was a son of a bitch, but we didn't know. You didn't know about the Holocaust so much during the war. Most of that came out after the war. The New York Times covered up the Holocaust. They wouldn't print stories about it. And some people say it was at the behest of Franklin Roosevelt because he didn't want it out too much. Because he wasn't doing anything about it or couldn't do anything about it.
Or didn't want to.
Yeah, didn't want to, yeah.
Did you feel a special job, a motivation to defeat Hitler?
Yeah, of course, being a Jew. Although we didn't know the whole extent of it, we knew he was a son of a bitch. Excuse the expression. That's a gentle word.
What would Hitler have done if America had not defeated him? American Russia.
If he had won?
Yeah.
Well,
what would he have done?
I would be dead, that was for sure.
Well, because you're an American flyer?
A Jew, yeah. He would have killed all the Jews in America just like he killed them in Germany. That was his credo.
What was his aim for America in general?
Well, he would never have defeated America, but if he did, it would have been the same as in Germany.
That we would have had to surrender to them.
Yeah. He didn't have a chance,
Well, how do you mean?
Well, he was never going to defeat America. The worst he could do is fight America off. Even if he had taken England and kept all of Europe, where we wouldn't have any way of invading or anything, so we would have stayed in America. But he would never have been able to defeat the United States.
Wasn't it a Japanese and German, the Axis powers goal?
The Italians were part of the Axis too.
Right, but wasn't the goal to conquer and divide America?
Yeah, of course. But he didn't get very close.
Well, our nuclear program probably solved that, no?
Yeah, that's true. Well, the nuclear bomb saved my ass because I was home in the summer of '45, and I had been instructing. This was after having been in combat in Italy in '44. I was instructing other gunners, and I was in Kingman, Arizona, and I hated it there. So I applied for a school which would have been a flight engineer on the new bigger bombers. They had flight engineer, and it would have led to, it was a 9-month course, and it would have led to a commission. And I thought at that time, this was July and August of '44 or '45, I thought at that time I'm going to finish the course of 9 months and then have to go fight Japan and maybe get killed. But while I was on leave, just before having to report to to the school on August 15th. August 14th was VJ Day. I went down there and reported to the school, and they said, well, if you want to go to the school, you have to join the regular Air Force. So I says, no, thanks, and I was home in 2.5 weeks, thanks to the atom bomb, which had been set off in early August. It wasn't for the 2 atom bombs, I would have been fighting in Japan and maybe get killed. Not been as lucky as I was in Italy.
What's the connection between the Arab-Israeli conflict of today and Hitler's Nazi regime?
Well, it's the same thing. It's only worse probably. Because the Muslims are 1.5 billion and they're mainly anti-Semitic. 1.5 billion people. They got 60 countries. In the UN, there's never a vote in favor of Israel. You got 60 Muslim countries, and all the other countries follow them. They follow the oil. The Jews don't have anything, the Arabs got oil. So, Europe and most of the United States favors the Muslims.
But the Muslim ideology, is it purely about where the borders of the Israel and Palestinian conflict resolve, do you feel?
No, it's not borders. They want us in the ocean.
The Jews?
They want to drive the Jews into the ocean. That's their stated game. They tell you that the day Obama signed the Iran peace treaty, so-called peace treaty, there were thousands of people out in the streets singing death to America and death to Israel and death to Jews. And that's their main thrust. They want us all dead.
You're saying they weren't protesting, they were celebrating a victory against American Israel?
Yeah, just unbelievable.
So here on the anniversary of Kristallnacht, what message would you like to convey to the Jewish people, to the young generations? Obviously you're a great-grandfather age. What would you tell to your great-grandchildren about the direction of politics in the United States and the defense of Israel?
Well, I'll tell them, just look back in history and see who's starting all the wars and who's starting all the terror and so forth. It's obvious.
Who is it?
It's Muslims. If you look around the world, 95% of terrorism is Muslims.
Is that something that a Palestinian state would solve?
No. Make a war. A Palestinian state is just a threshold to drive the Jews out of that tiny country into the sea. When they talk about driving into the sea, we're talking about 9 miles. If they get a real independent country and Israel allowed them to have armed forces, one night they would rise up, march into Israel in 1 hour and drive everybody, kill everybody in their beds. It's impossible. Can't have a country right on your border that wants to kill you and wipe you out.
What are your thoughts about the current direction of the Democrat Party and the Congress and the potential presidency?
Well, the Democrats should be impeached. They're insane. They talk about Palestinian rights. Palestinians have no rights. Palestinians started 5 wars. They lost 5 wars, and they're still complaining. You start and lose 5 wars, you have no rights. Especially since your thrust is not changing. You're still talking about killing all the Jews. How can you give them rights when they want to murder you?
Well, how do you feel about the direction of the Democrat Party now that it's moving left of center?
Well, it's become socialist. It's a socialist party. It's crazy.
Now, what about Jews who have been, for generations, they've been Democrat supporters? Is it the same party? The same party as the FDR days?
No. When I was young, I was a Democrat. Democrat Party was moderate, was sensible. Now they're a bunch of loonies. They call Trump all kinds of names, those names apply to them. They're bigger liars and bigger traitors, I think, than Trump would ever be.
What about the threat from the Islamo-leftist axis? You had an axis with Japan and Germany and Italy. Of course, Italy didn't have the army, but the axis between the Muslim countries and the left, the global left, through Europe and North America.
Yeah. Well, the Muslims were pro-German during the war. You know, Grand Mufti of Jerusalem was in Berlin teaching Hitler how to be an anti-Semite or how to kill Jews. So they were.
Where'd that idea come from? Israel wasn't established then. What was his problem with Jews?
Well, they hated Jews. That was before Israel. Well, Muslims and Jews have been at odds with each other for a millennium.
Was it anything that Jews started against Muslims?
I don't think so, but they'll tell you another story, you know. I think a lot of it stems from envy. They don't like Jews if Jews are successful, or they don't like that.
How about through theology? Does their doctrine teach them like Christianity?
Well, it's in the Quran. Stand behind a tree and throw a rock at a Jew.
So the Kristallnacht lesson for the young generation here at the end of 2019, people who think that Nazism or anti-Semitism is just and historic and can't be revived. What do you think?
Well, it can very much be revived. No. Jews are on the edge of a cliff for centuries, you know.
So here it is. Kristallnacht started the Holocaust. The U.S. defeated Nazi Germany. Did you ever think in your lifetime that you would see the resurgence of this fascism based on riding through anti-Semitism?
No, but on the other hand, it's not surprising because a good part of the world is anti-Semitic. You know.
Is political anti-Semitism just a means to its own ends to remove Jews from a society, or does it have a greater political function?
No, you know, the Jewish population in the world is a tiny fraction of 1%. So I don't know why they hate us so much, but you know, it's we contribute a lot. The state of Israel is very industrial, very scientific, contributing all sorts of ways to the world economy. We have about 100 Nobel Prize winners that are Jews. We got about 2 Muslims that won the Nobel Prize. So go figure.
What will you be thinking about this Veterans Day anniversary?
Well, I don't know what I'm thinking about. I always enjoy Veterans Day. I enjoy being a veteran. I enjoy the kudos that I get, and I feel good about what I did. I'm proud of what I did, and I'm proud of that I was a good citizen all my life. Never did a bad thing in my life. I was working from the time I was 11 to the present day. I'm active 62 years in the financial business, although I'm pretty near retired because most of my clients are dead.
By the way, did you have crew members or friends that you worked with, colleagues in World War II, who didn't survive their missions?
Well, yeah. We went over as a complete new bomb group. A bomb group was 4 squadrons of several hundred air crew and a couple of thousand ground crew. And but of the air crew that I went over with, they say 38% were killed or wounded before they finished their missions. So I was pretty lucky to finish my missions.
Did any of your planes get hit?
I got hit all the time. On one mission, we would lose probably one plane every other mission, mostly to ground fire. And because we had pretty good control of the air and fighter protection usually, we flew as a wing, which was 6 B-17 bomb groups in Italy. And the B-24s were a much greater number. There were about 30 bomb groups. But we would fly as a wing, and we would usually have a wing of fighter escorts. So some fighters would get through sometimes, but not in great numbers. But one time we had a mission to a target called Memmingen in southwest Germany, and people thought it was a milk run.
What's a milk run?
A milk run would be an easy trip. Not too much danger, not too many guns or fighters. Because considering it was Germany, but they thought it was going to be a milk run because it wasn't Munich or Berlin or Schweinfurt or one of those bad targets. So we went up there, but the other 5 groups disappeared. I heard that a couple of them over the Adriatic aborted because of weather. I don't remember bad weather, but I was in the back. But I didn't pay attention to the weather. And then a couple of other groups went, called back, and some people said there was a German, a recall went out that was purported to be American, but it was German. I don't know how true that was. But the wind-up was we're going along, my bomb group of 26 planes. It was 28 originally, but 2 had gone back because of engine trouble. So 26 of us were going to this target by ourselves, where the other groups were gone elsewhere, and the fighter protection was down in the Po Valley, 200 miles away, chasing a handful of German fighters in the Po Valley of Italy. And so when the Germans saw 26 bombers by ourselves, they sent up every fighter they had in Western Germany, and they came up, and I looked out my window. I was in the extreme. Luckily, we were the lead squadron on that mission, and had this young West Pointer leading us. And I looked out my right window, and I see a flock of birds, and I thought, what the hell are birds doing up here, 28,000 feet? And it turned out it would be 75 German fighters. Never saw so many fighters at one time. And then they swung around behind me, out of my view, to attack the rear squadrons. Well, they shot down, and then some more fighters came from a different direction. I didn't see them. They say it was as many as 150 or 200 German fighters attacked out 26 planes. And in about 10 minutes, they shot down 14 of the 26.
Oh boy.
And so we lost 143 men. And the only thing that saved me and my squadron was the fact that we were in the lead squadron, and they didn't shoot down any of the lead squadron, but they shot down 14 of the other 3 squadrons. When we got back to the base, and by the way, we bombed the target successfully. Some P-38 showed up to save us by that time, because the pilot, the commander, I guess, had been hollering for protection. And so some P-38s showed up and chased the Germans away. And we bombed the target successfully, got the Presidential Unit Citation for that. That was the first one. Got one for a later mission over Germany. And then when we got back, landed safely, ground crew was befuddled. They said, where are the rest of the planes? Because normally, you know, as I say, the most we'd lose is 1 or 2 on a mission. And most times didn't lose any. So they said, well, they're all gone. They couldn't believe that all the rest was shot down. And when I got out of the plane, they found an unexploded 20 millimeter cannon shell in front of my position. I'm in the right waist, which looking on back on the what they call the number 3 engine, which is the engine in the right wing. And there was a 20 millimeter unexploded shell in the wing, which if it exploded would have blown up the gas tanks, and all 10 of us would have been dead in 10 seconds.
Would you consider that miraculous?
I consider it very lucky. I heard a story once, and I don't know how true it was. I'm sure it's pretty true. That some guy came back in a plane, I don't know what kind of plane it was, with 11 unexploded shells in his plane. And when they took them apart, they found a letter in one of them, and it was signed by a Jewish laborer, a prisoner of war laborer, not a prisoner of war, a Holocaust laborer. And he says, "This is the only thing I can do for you." So he was making the 20 millimeter shells, but he wasn't putting the powder in it. Wow. And he risked his life doing it. So this was the shell that was in our wing was sabotaged that way. Because you don't forget to put powder in it unless you intend to do it.
Yeah. So some people say that freedom isn't free. Do you feel that our sacrifices during World War II were worth what was averted?
Well, if we hadn't gone into the war, Hitler would have had of all of Europe, and God knows what kind of a world we would have had. Yeah, we would have had all of Europe, and Japan would have had most of Asia, because we weren't doing anything about the fact that they were taking over China from the early 30s on.
So how do you feel about American military involvement these days, especially with the Turkey, Syria, and Iran, North Korea? Many Americans were calling for President Trump to not get involved in any military struggles. How do you feel about the need for military intervention in certain cases?
Well, if we don't get them out over there, they'll come over here. It's that simple.
Like Al-Qaeda?
Yeah, Al-Qaeda or all those guys. Yeah. If we let them take over those countries, and then they'll be very strong, and they can do a hell of a lot of damage to us. So it's a preventative war, that's all. But if we go to war, we should win the wars. You know, my war, World War II, was the last war we won. Korea was still fighting. Vietnam, of course, we definitely lost. In the Middle East countries, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, who the hell knows what's going to happen there? Probably walk out of there and they'll be taken over by the majority of anti-West Muslims.
Well, what if Iran and Turkey threaten, maybe with Russian support, threaten the survival of Israel? You feel that the U.S. should stand on the sidelines?
No, but it depends on who's the leader then. If you had Obama, he would have given them up in a minute. Yeah. Bernie Sanders, an anti-Semitic Jew, a pro-Palestinian Jew, I would call him.
Are liberal minds open to a diversity of viewpoints?
No, they're not very open. No. Talk to most of my family back east, still Democrats, and I don't talk politics with them because it gets heated. They think of Trump in a certain way, and I think Hillary and Obama were more so. So we're in different directions, and you can't talk sense to Democrats. It's different than 30 and 40 years ago. We could talk to each other, not anymore.
You think that's an accident, or could there be some political design to dividing society?
I don't know, just the way it is. Well, first of all, the press is biased. The press is 95% liberal, so they don't get the news, you know.
The public doesn't.
Yeah. You know, the only thing on television is Fox, and they'll tell you, oh, Fox is all lies. Well, I watch MSNBC and CNN, and I see who the liars are. So,
happy Veterans Day, if there's such a wish. For happy Veterans Day, and let's hope that the message of the veterans of the U.S. gets carried on into these ensuing generations.
We hope so. All of you.
How old are you today?
95 plus.